Welcome to ReZero, starting life in another world from zero. Today, we dive into the web novel's opening chapters. Prologue, waste heat of the beginning. This is really bad. He felt the hard floor against his cheek, and realized that he had collapsed onto his face. His strength was completely gone, and he had already lost sensation in his fingers. The heat from his core was so excruciating it made him want to tear his throat out. Hot, 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 hot. The moment he opened his mouth to scream, what spilled forth was no shriek, it was a clump of blood. He vomited up large quantities of his lifeblood as he coughed. Frothy blood started foaming up at the corners of his mouth as he gurgled. Within his dim field of view, the ground had been dyed red. Ah, this is all, my blood? There was enough to soak his fallen body. Blood comprises about 8% of the human body, and it is said that losing about a third of that would be life-threatening, but it seemed to him that he'd already lost just about all of it. He had stopped vomiting blood, but the heat that felt as though it would incinerate him still persisted. He moved his hand toward his abdomen with great difficulty, and having felt an impossible sensation there, he understood. My stomach's been torn open, huh? It was no wonder he felt so hot. It seemed his brain had confused pain for heat. He was almost torn in half, only a bit of skin at his back held him together. In short, it seemed that this was checkmate for him. The moment he realized this, his consciousness started fading. Even the heat which was making him writhe in agony had disappeared, even the unpleasant feeling of blood and the sensation in the hand he'd used to feel his organs, it was all fading away along with his consciousness. All that was left was his body, which would not be able to accompany his soul. This body used the last of its disappearing consciousness to move just a little. It turned its head upward. Black shoes formed ripples in the pool of blood before his eyes. There was someone there. And that someone was most likely the one who killed him. Strangely, he didn't feel like looking at their face. This person was the one who took his life, and yet he still decided to simply remain a spectator to his own demise. He had no clue who they were, but right now he didn't really care about that. He only wished for the girl's safety. Baru? He felt like he heard a voice like the chime of a bell. He was beyond the point where he could even differentiate his senses, so he probably just imagined it. Despite that, even supposing it wasn't real, he found it extremely comforting. So, a short scream, and then the carpet of blood welcomed yet another person. She had fallen right next to him, exactly where his arm was. Her fair hand dropped powerlessly, and intertwined with his. Probably just a coincidence. He felt her fingers move slightly, as if squeezing his hand. 8. He forced his disappearing consciousness to return for a moment. The pain and the heat, everything had faded away. It was a meaningless effort, nothing but a loser wasting time. But even so, I will, definitely, save you. At that moment, Natsuki Subaru lost his life. Arc 1, Chapter 1, Unusable Ridged 10. This is really bad. Lost and penniless, those few words were all he could think of. Well, penniless wasn't quite right. He did have his wallet in his pocket, and setting aside the fact that he had an abundance of small change and very few notes, it couldn't be denied that he had his assets on him. More than enough to go to the nearest mall to do some shopping and eat some lunch. Even so, he could only be called penniless. Looks like the currency around here is completely different after all. Flipping the rare ridged 10 yen coin he was holding, the youth sighed deeply. He was an unremarkable youth bearing short black hair and average stature. He had some muscularity which combined with his cheap jersey gave off the air of an athlete. His sharp eyes were his only noteworthy feature, and now even they drooped helplessly. The banality of his appearance was such that one could instantly lose him in a crowd, however the gazes directed at him were those of wonder and incomprehension, as though they were looking at something strange. Obviously, there wasn't a single person sporting black hair or a jersey among those looking at him. Their hair varied extensively, blonde, white, brown, green, blue and so on. Furthermore, their outfits were armor, dancers' clothes, monotone robes and more which possessed a certain vibe. The youth could only cross his arms in comprehension as their brazen gazes washed over him. So basically, it's like that, huh? Snapping his fingers, he pointed at those who were staring at him. Seems I've been summoned to another world. Before his eyes was a carriage drawn by a massive lizard-like being. Natsuki Subaru was born in Heisei-era Japan's pressure-free education system. He had lived 17 years, and to describe his life would take 17 years in itself. Setting that aside, his present situation could be simply described as high school third year, shut in. Or in more detailed terms, a piece of trash who disregards everything, even his parents, to shut himself in a shell even with his entrance exams right around the corner. There was no particular reason for his solitude. On typical weekdays, he would occasionally think getting up now would be a pain, and that became an impetus to cut school. With his absences steadily increasing, before he realized it he'd become an exemplary shut-in who brought tears to his parents. He spent his days in sloth, plunging ever deeper into the net with minimal communication. The result being a summons to another world, I don't really get it myself. Reconfirming his surroundings yet again, he heaved his umpteenth sigh. He had moved from the street he was on, and was presently sitting in a somewhat dim alley. The ground was paved. A rough job compared to modern Japan, but it wasn't bad. Supposing this is a parallel world fantasy, I guess this must be the standard medieval civilization. I didn't see any machinery, and they build with stone and wood. He thought back to the sights he'd seen on his way to the alley and organized the information in his head. He would frequently let his imagination run wild. As a result, he was more than prepared for his present situation. First, calmly analyze the time period's culture and its differences with Japan. Ascertain any differences in the laws of physics, and possibility of contact with humanoid organisms. These were his priorities. Alright, let's do this. I'm not imagining you guys, and I'm fairly certain about the level of civilization. It seems like my money won't be of any use, but I took the opportunity to speak to a shopkeeper and we had no problem communicating. Upon realizing he'd been summoned, the first thing Subaru did was attempt to negotiate with a grocer. Having attempted to purchase the apples? With his Japanese yen, he was promptly denied. It seemed that this world used gold, silver and copper coins as its currency. The inherent value of currency in this world was easy to understand, certainly befitting a parallel world fantasy. Well, I suppose there would be mixed metal fakes. Something like a 501 coin would probably degrade, though. Probably heavy to carry around, he thought as another lizard-drawn carriage passed through the street. This produced a giant cloud of dust, and yet the townsfolk paid it no mind, as though they were completely used to this. Even so, they don't seem nearly as common as cars were. Come to think of it, I haven't seen any dogs or cats around here. The lizards drawing the carriages appeared considerably larger than horses. Their body mass seemed constant relative to their proportions, but it was certainly worrying to see reptiles of that size. They're commonplace, both lizards and humanoids. Then the final piece he had to confirm, the unique looks of this world's humans. They possessed very colorful hair, but one could easily obtain any hair color with dye. For a parallel world fantasy, that was nothing extraordinary. Instead, Subaru focused on their animal ears. At a cursory glance he spotted dog ears, cat ears, perhaps even bunny ears, and he may have even caught sight of a lizardman-like being. There were also those who looked no different from Subaru, which led him to conclude. The genre is parallel world fantasy. The culture is that of your typical medieval civilization. Demi-humans are common, so battle and adventure might be common as well. The animals show some minor changes, but they basically serve their functions. Is that how it is? Having deduced that, Subaru exhaled a long breath that wasn't quite a sigh. Having spoken of the circumstances he'd ended up in, he knit his brows at this seemingly convenient development. If things proceeded according to his fantasies, he'd freely use his modern knowledge to obtain incredible power. However, this world was slightly different from what he'd planned for. I'd run perfect simulations of the Sengoku era. If I'd ended up there, I'd have seized the country from Nobunaga. When it came to parallel world fantasy, at best his knowledge amounted to gunpowder production. And even that was meaningless considering this world's technological level parallel world fantasy generally came with magic. If that were the case, it would probably make gunpowder little more than fireworks. Well, there's also cliches where magic isn't the end-all be-all. If I ever get the opportunity to contribute to the advancement of science, I'll do my best to. First, my current problem. He had no clue how or why he'd been summoned here. He clearly remembered what he was doing prior to the summoning. He had just gone out for the first time in a long while to buy some cup ramen at the convenience store and was about to return home. He didn't want to use his bicycle, so he went on foot. Midway, he looked up at the night sky and thought, it's almost a full moon tonight, huh? And then as he looked down and blinked, it was noon. Night to noon in an instant. He immediately realized something was off, but that was it. He'd calmed down now, but immediately after the summoning his panic was such that it could be told of for generations to come. Considering I being an only son have gone missing, those generations might not exist. As he muttered this, he once again checked his belongings. In a parallel world fantasy, starting gear was even more important than he'd imagined. He'd need everything he had, however little. First, his cell phone, with a dying battery, his wallet, containing many video rental membership cards, the ramen he bought at the convenience store, shoyu tonkatsu, some snacks, corn potage flavored, his beloved gray jersey, unwashed, worn-out sneakers, of 2 years, and more. That's that, huh? Why didn't I at least carry a pistol? What do I do now? It seemed only his snacks would prove useful, and only to fill his belly. The situation is hopeless. And of course I don't know the source, I don't even have any memories of passing through a mirror or hopping in a pond. Most importantly, where's the beauty who summoned me? The heroine's absence, by 2D standards, was an act of inconceivable negligence. To summon him and just leave him like that, it was as though he was simply thrown away. In truth, Subaru could no longer escape reality now that he'd assessed his situation and he could only hang his head in despair. Oh, give me a break already. What on earth am I supposed to do here? Subaru was already at his limit as he muttered complaints. He earnestly wanted to go back. Fantasy was best left in the realm of fantasy. It was fun to imagine arriving in another world to obtain incredible power, but to actually end up in such a situation, what could he really do? For now, what's important is survival, but will my level 1 communication ability be enough? Aside from his family, he only really spoke to store clerks. He'd lived this lifestyle for almost a year now and had long forgotten how to navigate social interactions. Even though I can type at speaking speed in online chats. Subaru moved his fingers nervously as he contemplated his future in despair. However, his expression changed when he heard the sound of footsteps echoing through the alley. He looked up to see 3 men blocking the exit. Arc 1, Chapter 2, Don't get carried away, said God. The men gazed at him with scorn and contempt as Subaru appraised them. They appeared to be in their mid-20s. Their clothes were filthy and it was as though their inner evil had manifested on their faces. They weren't subhuman, but they couldn't be called decent humans either. Damn, a compulsory event. Facing the grinning men, Subaru wiped his face and stood up in a panic. They were clearly bandits, and considering the state of the world they might even take his life. Mission 1, Repel the Bandits, had begun. The clear condition was eliminating them, and the failure condition was probably his death. Subaru smacked his cheeks and ignored the chill running up his spine. He had to get serious. Hesitation could cost him his life. He at least had confidence in his decisiveness. Furthermore, this is another world. Considering the typical pattern, I might be super strong here. Something like the gravity being 1/10 of what it was, or come to think of it, my body feels light. Maybe I can win. He's murmuring something. Maybe he doesn't get what's going on. Should we teach him? Unlike Subaru, the men remained fairly calm. However, Subaru continued to face them without backing down. Whoa there, you guys won't be so calm for long. Let me warn you, guys like me fantasize about this sort of thing all the time. I'll beat the crap out of you and turn you into XP. I have no clue what you're saying, but you're going to die for mocking us. That's my line. With that declaration, Subaru launched his preemptive attack before they could react. He flew into one of them with a full-bodied right straight. He landed a direct hit on the leader's face with such force that his front tooth cut Subaru's hand. He'd hit someone for the first time. And it was much more painful than expected. This was all he'd tried in his simulations, but it was his first time actually doing it. The man he hit fell to the ground and stopped moving. Driven by emotion, Subaru immediately lunged at another man who was still in shock. Eat this. A high kick forged by afterbath stretches. GUH. His foot drew an arc right into the man's temple and slammed him into the wall. Having knocked a second person out, Subaru started to believe he was invincible due to his unexpectedly competent performance. Looks like this world is set to raise my power after all. With all this adrenaline I can definitely win. Filled with courage, Subaru turned to the last man as he prepared to take him out. However, the glint of the knife in his hand caused Subaru to prostrate himself on the spot. I'm sorry, it was all my fault. Please forgive me, spare dash. He surrendered on his knees, the greatest and lowest representation of Japanese spirit. His earlier excitement had completely disappeared. Subaru felt his blood run cold as he tried his very best to beg for mercy, with his head on the ground. After all, he had no chance against a blade. If he were cut, he'd be finished. Skill didn't matter when it came to a knife-wielding opponent. He then realized the two who were supposed to be down were also getting back up. They nursed their bleeding noses and shook their heads dizzily, but otherwise seemed fine. Ha! How come my peerless attacks failed? Where's the power I'm supposed to have? What sort of crap are you spouting? How dare you do that to us? They stomped his head into the ground, causing his forehead to bleed as it scraped against the road. Subaru desperately curled up as they continued to pile on blow after blow. This is bad, it hurts like hell. I might actually die, for real. They showed no mercy whatsoever, and unlike his old world there was no guarantee they'd spare his life. There was a strong possibility that he'd be tortured to death like this. Perhaps he should have fought, prepared to die an honorable death. But that was no longer a possibility considering his injuries. Even so, he couldn't just die like that. Don't move, fool. Ow wow wow. Hurts. The moment he tried to get up, they crushed his hands underfoot and he could only scream in agony. The man turned red with rage and sent spit flying as he yelled. He then held the knife in an underhand grip. We'll kill you and take everything you have. That's what you get for messing with us. If it's valuables you're after, it's useless. You see, I'm completely broke. Your strange clothes and shoes will do then. We'll turn you into giant rat feed. Ah, there's rats in this world too. Sounds like a bottom-tier monster. His mind started drifting in an attempt to escape reality as he looked at the knife which could tear into him at any moment. He wasn't seeing any lights, nor did the world slow down. His life would simply end just like that. Hey, move. You're in my way. An exasperated voice rang out as someone ran into the alley. The startled men looked up at the intruder, and Subaru attempted to do so as well though he couldn't move. A beautiful girl crossed his field of view. Her frame was small, and she possessed shoulder-length blonde hair which fluttered in the wind. Her eyes suggested a strong will and her fawn-like canine protruded mischievously. She looked rather cheeky, but it could be said that she was cute considering her age. The shabbily dressed girl had just come across the scene of a genuine mugging. The seemingly deliberate timing caused hope to well up within Subaru. This was it, the development he was waiting for. Following the typical pattern, this kind girl would gallantly save Subaru who was on the verge of death, and then... Man, this is crazy. But I'm busy, gotta get out of here. Live strong. What? Seriously? However, that fleeting hope was crushed. Their eyes met momentarily and she raised her hand apologetically as she continued to run past them into what seemed to be a dead end. She then proceeded to leap off a leaning board and rapidly disappeared up the wall. With the girl gone, the alley naturally went silent. She'd gone by like a typhoon, leaving them dumbfounded, but Subaru's circumstances hadn't changed one bit. Now that the mood's been lightened, I don't suppose you might let me go? On the contrary, we're even angrier. You're not going to die a peaceful death, you know? The man with the knife looked serious. Subaru realized that he was finished for sure this time. His hands were still trapped under their heels. It was too late to attempt to get up. Ultimately, despair conquered his heart. It's over? Just like that, in a place like this? It's true I haven't lived very virtuously. Even so, a death like this is just too cruel. If I were to ask what I did, the reply would be that I did nothing at all, a completely idle demise. Pain. Wasn't it? There was something else causing him to tear up. It wasn't something like the fear of the end. He just couldn't bear having lived such an empty, meaningless life. That's enough, villains. A clear voice rang through the alley, overpowering the noise of violence, the men's vulgar jeers, and even Subaru's own ragged breaths. And that wraps up ReZero from the prologue to chapter 2. Thanks for listening, and be ready for the next part. See you in the next video.